Welcome to Luthiers Question Time with me, Ben Crow. I am in my home studio and life is incredible. It is the end of the weekend. It is 9 p.m. UK time on Sunday evening, and I spent the entire day near enough tidying my workshop. I finished a build and I have to start a new one tomorrow because that's my life. All of you need to play tiny violins. I love my life. But yeah, this is it. We're here, and my workshop is about a quarter tidy and pretty much ready for what I'm going to be doing for my Great Guitar Build-Off entry, which, well, the first video of that series is going live on Wednesday. I'm seeing a number of comments on people wondering where Nebula is, what has happened to Nebula. They're all worried and scared that something's gone wrong. Nothing has gone wrong. Nebula is in Josh's capable hands back at Crimson HQ with finish and the finishing process, essentially. I will go in once it's mostly done and maybe do a little bit of buffing or something like that. There's one or two areas where Nebula is a little bit delicate, in particular around the edges, and hitting those areas with a great big buffing wheel. Josh and everybody else involved has said, "Hey Ben, you want to do that bit, don't you?" And I kind of said, "Yeah, well, you know, if it's going to disintegrate, it may as well be me and on camera." She's not going to disintegrate, but you know, we'll see how it goes. Now, I don't know what else to say. Essentially, I need to answer more than a few questions. An edited version of the two live streams is now going live on a podcast, also called Luthiers Question Time. It is available, as far as I know, across the spectrum of podcast providers. It is on Spotify, it is on Apple Podcasts, it is on Stitcher, etc., etc. And I would love it if you would give it a listen, at the very least, to tell me what you think and if we need to make any changes. Anyhow, the first question of the day, this is Sean Dolby. He's coming with a £5 super chat to start the evening off right. Thank you very much, Sean. He says, I have a Crimson kit. He started off his build right as well. That I finished with your stains and oils. I don't like the finish as it was rushed. Will I be able to sand it back and refinish? Absolutely, 100% yes. That's one of the beautiful things about an oil finish, is that it's very reversible. Stains, less so. I'm hoping that you've chosen the right colour. But yeah, essentially, with pretty much any oil finish, it's not that much trouble to reverse course a little bit. Now, if you are sticking with the guitar finishing oil and you're happy with the stain, I wouldn't say go back to 120 grit paper and sand everything back to the bare wood and start again from scratch, unless the finish was particularly rushed. You could just, if you're lucky, here you go. I'm faltering on the first question, actually. I was going to suggest that you could potentially just apply more finish. If you've got enough oil on top, and applying that oil with 1500 grit wet and dry paper isn't going to sand through the stain, then you could just do that. Flood the guitar with the oil, rub it in with a sanding block and 1500 grit or even 2000 grit wet and dry paper. That will flatten down the surface. It will fix hopefully any and all issues that you have due to rushing or applying too much or not. The biggest problem that most people have is they do not rub away the excess oil to the proper extent. You really need to apply the oil, let it, in whichever way you're going to do it, let that cure-ish, and this is temperature dependent, so if you're in a very warm country, you apply the oil and you rub it straight away and get it off. In a cold workshop, you get some heavy duty tissue paper and get everything off the surface until it's almost touch dry. and then you let that cure, and then you go back and you do your next finish, next application the next day, or maybe later in the day. But, well, this is the problem. I see a question, it's a yes or no answer, and I give an essay. Anyhow, Luthifer is in the building, as is SC Guitars. Marcin of the Nuclear Village, that's a name I do not know, says, good evening everyone, greetings from Dover. And then a little thing like that. Dover, Dover, Dover. I've never been to Dover. Anyhow, Foot One Guitars, Coolwood Italy, Nick Guitar, everybody's in. Nick says, hey Ben, I will keep my part of the bargain and I will purchase an inside canal gouge. I contacted Vintage Tool Shop and now I'm waiting. Okay, I will. I'll check. Incidentally, one of the reasons that I do the live stream is so that people have a way of contacting me directly. Crimson Guitars is my baby, and as is the Vintage Tool Shop. And if there are issues, if we're not answering emails, or if something's gone wrong and you're not being serviced properly by my teams, this is a place where I nearly said I want you to get in touch with me. I would much rather it never came to that, but this is a place where people can get in touch with me directly and ask a question. Wow, Adam. Ask a question and hopefully I'll be able to fix it. And if not, I will be able to light a fire underneath somebody's bottom. So there we go. Adam Rohn is coming with a $50 super chat and just said, have a great weekend, Ben. Adam, thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I love what I do, and showing your appreciation in that way and nice comments, etc., just makes everything better. So thank you very much. Luthifer, still my favourite name. Can we trade names? He has sent a $5 super chat and said, hi Ben, so I have a combo wraparound bridge / tailpiece. It has adjustment screws that push off the posts. How should I set them before I drill? Okay, so I got that. So essentially what you're talking about is you've got the post that goes into the guitar, and then you've got your bridge, which sits on the post, and then you've got grub screws that will push against the post, therefore pushing the bridge further and further away from the nut of the guitar, as it were. It took me a second there. It is 9 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday, after all. With those things, you've got a point at which, if you push the grub screw so far, you start seeing the gap. That gap is not it's not attractive. So what I tend to do is I estimate long. Now, with most scale lengths, with most scale lengths and most string gauges, giving yourself 2 millimeters longer than the nominal scale length on the base side. So, for example, you are talking about a 648 millimeter scale length. So it's the metric equivalent, very close to the Fender scale length. You would actually say, look, once it's properly intonated, it's actually going to be about 650 millimeters long. And this is why they're called nominal scale lengths. The treble is either bang on or sometimes even a little short. I haven't actually gone and measured that for years. So I would set everything a little bit long, but give yourself 1 millimeter or 2 millimeters of ability to shorten it. Your biggest issue is likely to be needing to push the guitar bridge further away from the nut. But build in a little bit of leeway, being careful to avoid that gap, basically. Now, super chats are the best way for me to see the message, and we do go through as much as humanly possible, but there are hundreds of messages and 176 of you at the moment, so, and only 44 likes. Although 5 or 6 of them were before we even went live, so thank you. Anyway, Bill Coleman has come up and said, Nafta failure update. Okay, so Nafta. This is a guitar where Bill was working on the guitar a number of weeks ago and had it on his workbench. He was clearing off using Nafta, which is denatured alcohol, I think. So something similar to methylated spirits if you're in the UK. And that actually seeped onto the bench and totally messed up the finish on the back of the guitar. So this is the Nafta failure update. He says, restained the tri-burst on my father's guitar and cleared with 2K. I'm much happy with it now. Not all fails are fails, rather lessons. I would go one step further and say pretty much every failure I've ever had has been a lesson either to me or to somebody else, if at all possible. This is one of the reasons why 99% of my mess-ups end up making the videos, because anything else is, just rude. It's all about learning, isn't it, really? And that was the most important thing I learned, is to not try and hide my mistakes, but to glory in them somewhat. Brandy B's in the house. Thank you for it, Brandy. How's it going? Busy. I saw that you said earlier that you're watching this while at work. I think I saw that. Anyhow, any advice on staining a gradient on a guitar? Light in the middle and dark on the edges, trying to make a burst after a fashion. Okay, so assuming that you do not have a spray booth or a... Wow. I've completely forgotten the name for an airbrush. There we go. My brain is so flighty that I remembered the first time I ever saw somebody who had an airbrush and being utterly blown away by this guy. And I can't remember, I was like 8 or 9. And here's something about me. You all know that I have I will get to your question, Brandy, I won't forget. I have a huge issue with remembering faces and names and directions, all due to numerical dyslexia and all that jazz. And that's fine, but one of the side issues with that is, for the longest time, i.e. until I was about 15 or so, I didn't know my left hand from my right hand. I just, it's always, you have to sit and you have to think. And I met this guy, went back to the lounge of this house. In the meantime, it had got dark and the lights were off in the passageway, and said to the host, "Oh, do you mind if I go back and chat to so-and-so in his bedroom who's using this airbrush?" And I don't think I've ever told anybody this story. I walked out of the door, shut it, and they'd said, 2 doors down on the right. And I walked out the lounge door, shut it, got lost immediately. It was dark, and I couldn't see my hands, because my mother, when she was young, she was cooking while holding me and burnt a massive lovely scar on my right hand. I couldn't see my scar. I didn't know which door it was. And yeah, anyway, I eventually found it, and have always wanted to be an airbrush artist, and I've never really gotten any good at it. Anyhow, staining a gradient on a guitar, light in the middle, dark on the edges. Essentially, if you don't have the aforementioned kit and gear, you have to apply it by hand with tissue, and the easiest way to get it even, i.e. the gradient that you want, is to, if you're using water-based stain, you apply the stain pretty much where you expect it to be, and then straight away you go in with a wet rag, or a damp rag at least, and you use the water to spread the darker external stain into the middle to get that gradient. It is not easy. It will take practice. Please practice, but it is possible. The other option is to stain a solid, or as much more of the stain than you want, and then attack it with fine sandpaper, 320 or 400 grit thereabouts, and that's removing the stain physically rather than diluting it as you're applying it. You can actually do exactly that as well if you require it, especially with the water-based stains. You can you can take a small cup of the colour that you want and dilute it as many times as you want and apply that. You will still need to use water to smooth that gradient out though. So yeah, there we go. Now I've got a number of messages here from Stephen, who is watching who's watching and trying to make sure that I don't miss any of the super chats. Yefei Lai, I'm sure I've mangled that name. I apologize. I sent $5 but no question. So if you've got an actual question, every now and then the question sort of gets lost. Drop us an email, a message, and we'll look for it. Stephen Clark has said, at Crimson Guitars, how freaked out are you that you have less than 2 weeks for your GGBO entry? Well, you know, yeah, it's not bad. Okay, so here's the reality. No, I'm not going to bullshit. I was going to make a joke about how, you know, Brad Angover's only just started and you know, I thought I'd give him a run for his money or something. That was Brad. The team at Crimson did make a mistake and they sent out a multi-scale kit that he had asked for instead of the one that he wanted for the build-off. And the whole point was that he was going to have both of them and they were going to be shipped together. And something went wrong, so he had to wait a little bit longer. I am a little bit freaked out. I spent the first part of today not cleaning the workshop, but I was actually going to start the build today. And I have come to the conclusion that the guitar that I had planned, what I was going to build, is utterly impossible in the time frame. And something that I've learned this year is if I'm not going to be able to build it to the quality and to the level that I want, then there's no point in even starting. So I spent the first half of the day rifling through the 400 or so other ideas that I have. And I finally decided what I'm building. Here's the kit. So I asked for an uncut kit with a flame maple back and a flame maple top, but I didn't want either the back or the top glued on because the guitar that I wanted to build is made up of multiple squares and rectangles that are cut away from each other, and triangles actually, and separated and angled and hollowed out, and it's going to be super cool. But this is what we've got. She is unfretted. I'm going to do a custom inlay, sort out the headstock, and there's no side dots either. So, you know, it's not too bad. I've built a guitar from scratch in just over 6 hours. I've done them in 12 hours before as well. I can work at speed if necessary, and a lot of the work has already been done. A lot of the routing, etc., the relatively easy stuff that's easy but time consuming has been done, so I will be okay. The biggest issue I've got actually is the fact that my poor sister has to edit all of the videos, and yeah, I really feel sorry for her. Oh, here we go. So Yefei Lee, I think, has come in and said, hey Ben, two-parter here. I build guitars as a hobby with CNC, but work often gets in the way. Yeah. So even with me, and I'm going to wait for the second part, even here I am on camera. I love this bit. I love figuring out different angles. I love playing with different cameras and the GoPro and all that jazz, and figuring out what I'm going to build and all of this. But my real job really is making sure the Crimson's running smoothly, and I have an hour or two phone calls every single day with people running that, and I've got the tool shop, and working out what we're going to do next and checking the accounts and talking to the accountants, all of that sort of stuff. That's my real life, and that really does get in the way of the fun stuff. Anyhow, he says, this is the second part, have you got any methods for storing carved necks for a couple of months without them warping? I used roasted maple and power ferro laminated necks. Okay, that is not what I expected to see. All right. First of all, you're coming in with very good timbers in any case. So roasted maple is also known as torrefied maple. Make as many jokes as you require. And power ferro is a rosewood analogous. I think it may even be in the Dalbergia family. I'm not sure. These are both very stable. Now, the first thing I would do is immediately, with every guitar I make, I use carbon fiber stiffening rods, and I use dual action truss rods, just in case there's anything that does occur that isn't ideal. And then the next thing is my workshop. It's actually the bane of my existence. I have a dehumidifier running all the time that I'm not filming, which is fine, except when I stop filming I'm supposed to turn it on. And in fact, part of the tidying up today was moving the dehumidifier next to the door, so that as I'm locking the door and putting the alarm system on, etc., I can see the dehumidifier, and hopefully it reminds me to turn the damn thing on. So that's the first thing. You need to store them in a humidity controlled environment. That does not have to be an entire room with dehumidifiers going, or you don't have to, if you're working in a garage, running a dehumidifier all the time. That gets expensive. Okay, we've got a very small cupboard, I suppose. It's about 25 centimeters longer than the average fretboard, so perfect for a neck. And in that cupboard we store our fretboards. And when we buy the fretboards, they're never quite dry enough, and we've got a little light bulb in there that gives off a little bit of warmth, and that dries the fretboards slowly over time. I have seen other guitar builders' workshops where they've come to the conclusion that there is no way that they would be able to control the humidity in their environment. I suppose they live in Nevada or somewhere where it's particularly dry, or Seattle. Isn't it funny? I watch lots of movies and know about weather in places I've never been, where it's very, very wet and rainy all the time. These luthiers have humidity-controlled cupboards, i.e. big enough to store 5 or 10 guitars in. And when the guitar is off the bench, it goes into this cupboard. They've got a hygrometer. I don't know. They've got the digital ways of measuring what's going on in there. They've got heaters. They've got dehumidifiers. And in a space like that, you only need a very, very small, very, very cheap to run dehumidifier. And if you've got the space for something like that, I would very strongly advise you to use it. Now, honestly, most carved necks, if you've got an issue with carved necks warping over a period after you've carved them, then you do also have an issue that's more of an issue than you think. It's not just the storage. Once you finish the guitar, in my mind at least, that neck would warp anyway. So essentially, I think that you really do need to check the dryness of the wood that you're getting. Now, torrefied maple really should be, it's part of the process. It's dried in a kiln and under a vacuum. So it should be incredibly dry wood already. And it is a joy to work with, isn't it? So, yeah, I'm not entirely sure on that one. I think, yeah, you have to control the humidity. You have to check that the material is good to start with. And in the building process, use carbon fiber stiffening rods and dual action truss rods, and you should be okay. Very finally, the way that we long-term store wood is you would stack it up with stickers i.e. sticks, and stack it up with weight on top. And you could do that with your necks as you're storing them. Make sure that there's airflow going through, and if the neck is going to continue drying, losing moisture, then it shouldn't twist as you go if it's underweight. But that should not be necessary. You should have wood that is already dry enough to be getting on with. Okay, there we go. Shock the Fox. Hey, he sent $5 and said, "Cheers, Ben. Thank you for these discussions. The questions and answers always get me thinking." Me too. Can you see the panic in my... the panic. I need to catch up on your GGBO. Life is... yeah, I managed to watch about 3 episodes yesterday, and I was doing accounts, and I cannot think of numbers and watch videos at the same time. There's now 400 plus videos to watch, and yeah, it's getting good. Okay, Spike the Frugal Fixer says, "Hey folks, Firebug." Yeah, don't. Leandro Oliveira has sent 40 rand. How's it going in SA? Ben, you beautiful bearded man. Why, thank you. My book-matched drop tops keep coming apart on the seam after I glue them to the body. Any ideas? Also, I don't have clamps that reach the centre of the body when gluing the top. Ideas? Okay. Honestly, the issue here is you need to go back to the very, very, very basics and have a look at your planes. And I know it's only so... where are we? 27 minutes in, and I'm already mentioning hand planes. I have no idea how sharp you can get your planes and how good the joints are. The first thing that I would check is the quality of the joint itself, and the glue that you're using potentially may be a little bit suspect. Even the glue itself might actually be off or something like that. Now, with a joint, if you have to force it together when you're clamping it, if it takes pressure to close the joint, then you need to go back and plane some more. I would suggest a shooting board if you don't have one. Very easy to make, just a couple of slabs of flat plywood, and then your plane goes on its side. You've all seen me use it, and that gives you the easiest possible way of jointing a top. I remember in my early years when I was building viola da gambas, actually, and the first number of tops that I jointed, and they were 3/4 of an inch thick or so, it took me days. And actually the same with the backs of the viola da gambas, which are 6mm or well, no, much smaller than that, 3 or 4mm. But it just took me ages and ages, even using a shooting board. So I would suggest that check the joints. If you can pull the two halves together and not see the line in the middle, and if you can pull those together with your finger, just the strength of your fingers, that's a good joint. Okay, so that being said, the next issue you have is they're coming apart on the seam, and you say that you don't have enough clamps to reach the center of the body when gluing the top. Okay, so this is another relatively easy fix, and it's incredibly difficult to describe. There is a jig that acoustic guitar builders use for gluing together tops, actually, and essentially you put your top in the middle of this jig and then use wedges to wedge it shut. So for example, you've got a number of pins around the outside, and the wedge goes in between the pin and the side of the top, and that wedges it in. There are other jigs, and you're gonna have to Google top gluing jig, acoustic guitar top gluing jig, something like that, where they'll use rope and wedges to do it. Now in your case, what I would suggest is put your body in the top slow down, Ben. This is not one for radio. Definitely not. Wedges are the key. You want to have clamping cauls running down either side of the body. So you clamp down, and those clamping cauls, to the top of those you've got another rail going across, leaving a gap between the top and so you've got a caul going across, you've got a gap, and then your guitar body is under here, and you'll use a wedge there to push down in the center of the guitar. I think I explained that correctly. Okay, phew. If you need any more, Google acoustic guitar making, gluing jigs, and you should come together with something. And if that hasn't helped, please send an email with some photographs to stream@crimsonguitars.com, and I will eventually get it. I've done little to no admin apart from yesterday for weeks, and for the next 2 weeks life is going to be crazy as well, but Ricky's minding that email address at the moment, and he will put it in front of me and I will have a look. Okay, Silvano Paggioni has come in with €10 and said, I want to build a short scale 30-inch bass. The Crimson bass notch straight edge is for 32 to 36-inch scale lengths. Can I use that for a 30-inch scale length with the nut on or off? Is there a 28 to 30-inch scale length straight edge? Okay. Unfortunately, this is a question for the shop at Crimson Guitars. It's a long time since I worked on the bass notch straight edge. Now, I did design it, and knowing me, I will have designed it to work on 30-inch as well, because it's a relatively common fail. Here we go. It's a relatively common scale length. Now, here we go. So essentially, you should be able to. Yes. Okay. We need to check these slots here. Not sure if you can see that. That's much higher than any of the other slots, so that it goes over the nut. And I would say that I designed that bit to go over a 30-inch scale length, and it should say that on the website. The fact that it doesn't means that we need to check. If you drop an email through to the shop, photograph, I will be talking to them tomorrow, and they will know to let you know, and they need to adjust the listing, which is something that the whole website needs a complete overhaul. Okay, Scott Partington says, you're stranded on a desert island. You have 3 tools with you. Which 3 tools are you hoping to have? If you choose a multi-tool or Leatherman, that's simply cheating. How is it cheating that this is literally the only tool that I have on me all the time? Oh, didn't go quite so well the second time, did it? I mean, all the time. Come on. Stranded on a desert island. Satellite phone. One of those awesome jugs that lets you purify water. And a Leatherman. Because I have decided that I have oppositional defiance disorder, and screw your rules. I think Leatherman would be the one. If it can't be a Leatherman, it would be a Bowie knife, a big, great big knife of some sort. Let's have a look. Just so something like this one. Here you go. So this is fun. Nice pouch. obviously this isn't the sort of thing that gets carried around. And if you push that, you've then got that. And I think with something like this, or an even bigger proper Bowie knife with a compass in it and all that jazz, I think that would be cool. You can use that to chop things. You can use it to build things. You can use it to start fires. You can use the compass in it, etc. It's got a. In fact, I feel the need to have one of them now. Incidentally, this was my dad's when I was a kid. So I've had this longer than pretty much anything else in my life at this point. Okay. Great question. Great question. Let's see what else we're missing. Raw Zen says, "Hi Ben, just found your channel the other day." Raw Zen. Yeah, I like that. I found your channel just the other day. I was only trying to find out how to remove finish off a guitar neck, but found so much more. I removed the finish too. New fan, right? Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, there is a. I'm wondering if that's a comment. I had a comment that I actually answered. I try and answer as many comments as humanly possible. It's fallen off the cliff the last couple of weeks because of Shred and GGBO. I'm assuming you've all watched Shred come together. But I answered a comment on somebody who's had a matte neck, an Ibanez I think it was, and over the time this neck had become shiny because obviously playing and friction and all that jazz. And the question was, is there a way to bring it back to a matte finish without damaging the instrument? And my answer was, unfortunately, it's the single and only justifiable use of wire wool in a guitar workshop. I think that would work very, very well. Another option is there are particularly fine abrasive pads. Merca do these, and that's an abrasive pad. It looks like Scotch Brite, but it's actually graded, and that would do the job quite nicely as well. And then finally, if you have to, some wet and dry sandpaper. Okay. Well. We're on a good run today. I like it. Ivan Wizard has sent €5, and he says, "So, I did the copper leafing on the college blanket chest. Turned out a lot better than I thought for the first go ever. Thanks for the advice, Ben." It's an absolute pleasure. Seriously, copper leafing. If you have ever heard people bemoan the difficulty of gold leaf, copper leaf is not that. Copper leafing it's so much thicker, and it just goes on. It's a much easier process. So yeah, essentially, it's one of those things I heartily suggest you do. I'm considering copper leaf again in the GGBO. We'll see. Okay, Lucifer has come back in with another super chat, and he says, "Is that my number 6? Is it you? Is that my number 6 in the background, or your new one?" It's my new one. Hold on. I literally took your one off the shelf about an hour ago. So apparently says, "Yes, 'tis I who is buying it." Working out details with Safi via email. I was going to ask Safi to ask you to hold off for a little bit. Now, this plane has got a relatively nasty repair. You can just see a couple of screws holding the tip of the handle in, and it has always been my goal to fix that properly with rosewood. It's got some mahogany on it, and make it more attractive, because it just doesn't. It's not that great. And well, now that I'm selling it, I have to. So what happened to everybody who doesn't know is I opened a tool chest on video a couple of weeks ago now, and this number 6 was in the chest, and I immediately said, oh my gosh, I have to have that number 6. It's a little bit older than this one, but I'm collecting this exact age, and it doesn't have the adjusting knob in there, and it doesn't have patent dates, etc. It's just, I love them. And I've got these low knobs, so I've got 3, 4, there's number 4 there, there's number 3 there, and I hope to have a full set of them at some point. I then found another 2 planes I was going to keep instead and said, oh fine Safi, you can sell this. But Luthier heard me say that and said, well, if Ben's taking this one, can I have Ben's? And yes, you absolutely can. So I have a question for you, Luthier. Do you want the Clifton blade that is currently in this one, or do you want a Ron Hock blade? So the Clifton is the one that's been in this plane for a long time. The Ron Hock blade is a more modern upgrade. They both have their, well, they're both fantastic blades. But the choice is yours. Let us know in the live stream and I will make it happen. It's going to be a couple of weeks before I can ship it out, because I really do want to fix that handle for you before it goes. I may even film the process. So there we go. Now, questions. Eric Lunty sent $5 Says, do you watch Project Binky on YouTube? No. Isn't a Binky a pacifier? Or am I completely wrong about that? Screenshot. No? Screenshot. Haha. I'm loading this phone. Tell me about Project Binky. Why do I need to watch it? And I suppose you have to tell the 5,000 or 6,000 people who are going to watch this video as well, because yeah, I fear I should know this now. Okay, SC Guitars has said, speaking of the tool chest video, what happened to the egg beater that disappeared halfway through? It was literally just in the way and I needed more space and I chucked it over there. I have my favourite drill, and this is an 1880s, thereabouts, Miller's Falls. Those do not come through very often. Okay. Don Church says, at Ben, you were mentioning historical inspirations a few weeks ago. Have you considered a historical inspired build collab with Scholar Gladiatoria? I would love to do something like that. I really would. The issue is the aforementioned oppositional defiance disorder. So one of the first, crikey, Adam, he said $100 now. You're insane, dude. Thank you very, very much. That's the first time I've ever seen a red super chat thing come up. I owe you a phone call now. Okay, you've totally thrown me off my spiel. One of the first instruments I had a proper hand in building that was for somebody was a group. I built one. I built the tenor version, and it was a group of 4, I think, Renaissance viols. So viola da gambas, early viola da gambas, and we had paintings, and we took these paintings and worked out exactly what we thought this instrument would be and how it would play and all that. We made them, and they were then played by very, very famous early musicians, and it was just incredible, but so precise. And I am at this point, really, I play. I want to push the envelope, not try and do that anymore. I suspect, however, as I get older, I'm going to find myself trying to do that more and more. Do I hear hurdy-gurdy? Anyone? So yeah, I mean, that would be really cool. Collaborations. I would love to do more collaborations. I do think that would involve visiting people more, and that is a... yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, I've just had... Wednesday last week I had my second jab for the COVID vaccine. My wife has had her too. So yeah, it's all good. Okay. Luthier has come in and said, "Whatever blade you want, it's your call. I'm putting that part on you." I will play between the two, and as I say, whenever anybody is choosing a plane, make sure that you've got one with the tightest mouth available. I will see which blade suits which plane, and we'll go from there. Okay. Now, hi Ben, Justin here. Do you have any advice for me being a machinist for 10 plus years in a machine shop? I'm now going to start venturing into building my own guitars. Oh, yes. I wish that I was a machinist. I'm looking at my Paul Myford here, and I've got a small, not quite bench-mounted milling machine. And I know just enough to be dangerous on these tools. I just swallowed some beard. This is going to seem disingenuous, potentially. As a machinist, you think in basically microns. And on a guitar, you're going to have to train yourself out of that. The only place you need to worry really is the fret positions, and we're talking to a tenth or two of a millimeter. You're not talking thousands and thousands and thousands of an inch. So that's the one thing. Anytime we've had a machinist come through our Luthiers school of Crimson Guitars, you can tell who they are because everything is absolutely perfect. They have a mini meltdown when a piece of wood starts cupping or bowing after they've made it flat, because they left it flat. Here's a quick tip, actually, all of you. If you flatten down, for example, a top and then leave it flat on your workbench for a weekend, it's gonna cup. No matter how well dried the wood is, the exposed portion is going to lose or gain moisture more than the other bit that's on the workbench. If you're leaving a piece of wood over the weekend, either leave it under weights or make sure that it's got air evenly around it. Okay, so the advice is you really don't have to be quite as precise. However, if you can dial that back just a couple of notches, you will make an incredible guitar builder. I have absolutely no doubt. The wood is a different thing. Metal does what you tell it to and it stays put. Wood fights. Wood's, a bit of a bastard really sometimes. But yeah, I think you'll be amazing. Okay, there's a couple of other questions here. Okay. Xenox says, I have a question for Ben. I have an original Gibson Voodoo Explorer, which is described by Gibson as having a juju finish. The finish is worn as I toured the guitar. Would it be possible to restore this? I have no idea. I'm Googling this. I can't... I have no idea. Oh, okay. essentially this looks to me like it's a flash coat kind of an applied finish. It's very light. That's what it looks to me to be. So yes, it should be something that can be restored, but you're gonna have to go to the forums, I suspect, and find out exactly what it is. I don't have, as I'm just evidenced by the fact that I needed to look it up, I don't have a clue. Carl Price says, Anne Faborden, Project Binky is worth watching if you like to see people problem solve ways to do something. I really do. I mean, 95% of my problems are self-inflicted. Rab Knox. Hey Ben, screenshot this. Answer Rab Knox's email. Okay. I am the worst person in the world to answer emails, but... Now. Richard Garnish. That is exactly what I would say as a machinist making the transition to woodworking. Drop 1 digit of precision from what you're used to working with, lest you lose your marbles. Absolutely. And it goes with all facets of the business. So, for example, when you're sharpening chisels, I mean, actually, mine I get a mirror finish for the most part, and I'm very, very, very precise, but I have no idea what the bevel angle is on my chisels. And a machinist, or machinists I know who get into this, they will know to within half a degree, that is 25 degrees, that is 30 degrees exactly. And if it goes a little bit off, they start having panic attacks, and that is not important. My paring chisels, my bevel edge chisels here, it's about a 30 degree bevel, and I set that a long time ago, and I just sharpen it by hand, and it's there or thereabouts. It's not going to make any difference whatsoever. So take most of these things as a guideline. If you want a paring chisel that's not going to stay sharp for as long but will give you incredibly fine cuts, 30 degrees. If you want a mortise chisel for beasting things through, 25 or even 20 degrees if you really want to hit stuff. But that's not guitar building for you. But yeah. Rabnog says, woohoo! At least he's screenshotted it now. At Spike the Frugal Fixer, so I might get an answer in the next week or two now. Lol. Maybe. I see... yeah. Mike Howe is in the building. Hi, Mike. I haven't seen you in a while. It's since like at least February 2020-ish. Scott Partington says, hi, Ben. I make mosaics out of wood, and the finished piece is all end grain. It's easier to shape and split the end grain. What would you recommend for a finish? I'm using epoxy for grout. Thanks. The scare quotes was on the grout. The finish. Okay. I'm not sure why you're not just using the epoxy as the finish, to be honest. If you thin down the epoxy, if you're already using epoxy, then epoxy would act as a finish. If you're flooding the epoxy, letting that dry, sanding it back, then pretty much any finish would do. I personally love the look of oil, and it's very, very easy, and the end grain will suck that up, and you'll build a finish up quite nicely. Oil is also something that, as it dries, you can add more, and if these are things that you're selling, you can actually make a pretty hefty markup. I know kitchen makers who make more profit selling oil to the people who they've made a kitchen for than they do on some of the things that they make for the kitchen. And it's like, okay, well, this oil you need to apply it 6 monthly, and it's 100 quid per 500 milliliters or something. or 200 quid, and it's the best oil in the business. Yeah, okay. Just FYI, that particular kitchen factory, they're using Crimson Guitar's guitar finishing oil. It doesn't retail at 100 quid for 500 milliliters. Oh, anyhow, Joe Brown, second try. We really do. There's so many comments. Hi Ben, any podcast recommendations? Okay. Yes. Also, I bought a cheap ass nylon string today. Strings are very loose. Do I bring it straight to pitch or do it slowly so I don't break anything? I don't think you will break anything, even on a cheap ass nylon string. I just bring it straight to pitch. It will move. The strings will have some, they will stretch out over time anyway, so you're not going to stay at pitch. If you start hearing cracks, then rewind. Okay, so podcasts. Obviously, Luthiers Question Time. Although just as obviously, you're watching me doing this, so I assume you don't need to, because hey. So my phone was upgraded a couple of weeks ago, and in the process, I've actually lost a lot of the podcast that I was listening to. I listen to a lot of watch-based podcasts, obviously, because I just love the precision and all that jazz. So Worn and Wound and the Greynator and Hodinkee podcast. Freakonomics is incredible. How I Built This with Guy Raz, that is a business podcast, and if you are in any way, shape or form interested in starting a business or currently run one, then one of the most important things that I would say to anybody is listen to as many interviews with successful business owners as possible, and that is one of my favourite. Coffee with the Greats with James Fisher, that is another one, just incredible. That is a guy called James whose father was major, worked with the US government. I think he worked at the Fed as well, knows like everyone. And he and his father interview like CEOs of major companies like PayPal and stuff like that. In fact, the guy who runs PayPal, he has his own podcast as well. He started off with it's so annoying. In martial arts, I learned to take a punch or something like that. Every single time. Radiolab, 99% Invisible. Yeah. Wood Talk. Wood Talk. There's 500 episodes. They stopped doing it ages ago, but I listened to all 500 episodes over a couple of years. So I mean, that's some of them, and that's not even all of them. If you guys have any podcasts that you think I should listen to, please let me know. Coolwood Italy says, hi Ben, any issues in principle with making a multi-laminate fretboard, and anything I need to particularly consider? Okay, so I'm not sure what I tripped on there. I thought the workshop was supposed to be tidy. Okay, so this is the Cyberpunk guitar. You can see the multi-laminate fretboard here, and essentially I've made... We have a lot of ebony that comes through that's just no use as fretboards. It's got cracks and shivers and shakes and all sorts of stuff. So I cut those up, put them like so, and made them into this. And I love the digitized sort of effect. I suspect, however, you're talking about laying a load of veneers that way. That won't be strong enough, I don't think. So essentially, by making a fretboard where you've got multiple pieces next to each other and they all glued together, then every single glue joint acts as a long section of grain, And what makes the wood strong is that grain. Putting it flat, even flat like that, if you think about, if you stand on one end of an 8x4 sheet and have your friend lift up the other, and this is particularly thick, it's just going to bend and flex. Whereas doing it that way, trying to bend it, it won't at all. So I think if you do it that way, no problem whatsoever. In fact, go for it. It's great. It's stronger than most fretboards. If you're going to go slab, I wouldn't. Okie dokie. Dennis Osmondson says, will you ever make a headless guitar? I would love to see that. I have done several times, just never on video. I've got a couple of headless kits here. I'm not going to pull them out because, well, they're next to a pile of about 200 batteries. Unfortunately, I go through 4 to 6 AA batteries a day when I'm filming properly to run my my lapel mic. It's most annoying. But anyway, yes, I am planning. I am also ham. I am planning on doing headless instruments in the future on video. Toby Schofield says, hey Ben, I love the way Shred turned out. I need a bandsaw. A budget of up to £200. Have you got any recommendations? Okay, yes, at that price, buy second hand, scour Craigslist, or you're saying pounds, so well, it depends on where you are really, eBay, etc. You should be able to find a relatively big one for that. Now, the bandsaw that I have in my home studio, it's a bench-mounted Record BS 250, and that is £310. And it is, out of all of the small cheap bandsaws, that is without a shadow of a doubt, and I'm not sponsored by Record, I just love their tools. It's got a cast iron table, it has got all of the same features as their more expensive, bigger brothers, and it is class beating. So if you can stretch for another £100 or get that on a deal or something, I would suggest that. The problem is it's not big enough for example, book matching and the meteor tasks. It is okay for cutting body blanks out and the like, but if you want to do larger work, then I would suggest you need a 12-inch or a 14-inch bandsaw, a 10-inch or a 12-inch bandsaw, I suppose. And for £200 or thereabouts, you should find a good one on eBay that just looks a little bit sad, I would suggest. Yeah, definitely. Give me questions, give me questions. JK Electrical says, hi, would you use a panel saw to make a scraper? Have you met my new saw? Yes, this is a Buck & Co. from Whitechapel. This is just insanely gorgeous. Yes, absolutely. Old saw blades are very good steel for the most part, and would make a scraper very, very, very well. Now, I need to stay there. I don't want that to fall on my leg. When I was in my apprenticeship, we needed to make shaped scrapers, like the small set that we offer at Crimson. So there's various little shaped scrapers. This wasn't available back then. We would have just loved this sort of thing. I'm trying to watch the screen over there, where I've got one here I can look at. So yeah, I was making one of those things, and using a file, wherever the steel had come from, maybe in saw blade, I slipped with my file because I was young and silly, and the palm of my hand scraped down the scraper. it put me out of action for a week or more. It was nasty. So yes, you can, but please just be aware that, especially when it's fresh and you've just been wire cutting it out, or wire cutting, tin snips, yeah, careful. Fools with Tools. That's a podcast recommendation from Lilgrim or Ilgrim. I'm not sure. Okay. Richard Garnish says he's another happy BS250 owner here. They're fantastic. It took me a little while to get mine set up. But we'll get there. Marco Rachevish potentially says, "Hey Ben, is it possible to expect the neck through kit? Drop Sam an email, office@crimsonguitars.com, said Ben has promised me a neck through kit. Here's my money. When can I expect my kit?" It's literally that simple. As soon as somebody's actually put down some money and said, "Hey, I want one," then it just goes on the list. It might take a little while to do it, but it will certainly be here faster than if it is just something that I've said, "Hey, we need." There's about 20 or 30 different kits in progress. We have just bought a new CNC machine. It is on the way. It is going to make all of the kit making faster, essentially, and more efficient. It means we'll be able to do the development faster as well, which is great. Okay, Sam Maskery. "Hi Ben, how are you today?" I'm pretty good. I got in a little bit of Rocket League before I started. Had a vegetarian dinner for some reason. Which isn't an issue. Just surprised me. And tidied most of my workshop today. So yeah, there we go. He says, "I just wanted to say thank you so much for answering my questions on Friday. Absolute pleasure. I had to catch up on the recording, but you helped me a lot. It's an absolute pleasure. I have messed up so much in the past because I didn't have any of these resources that we now enjoy so much. And part of the reason I do this is, part of the reason I do this is obviously, it's my living, and it's the living of, at Crimson I've got 24 staff, so there is that. But I remember agonizing over how to do binding. I didn't have knowledge of routers, and I didn't even know where to get bearing router cutters, for example. We didn't have any of that, and I agonized over ways to do it that would be worth doing. And neck break angles, it used to keep me up at night. Nowadays, if somebody asks me about neck break angle, well, I've made the videos, but they can find the answer for that without having to lose sleep. So yeah, it's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for letting me know that I'm helpful. Okay, Captain of My Shed. Haha, oh Captain, my Captain. "Hey Ben, shred was awesome. Absolutely loved the copper leaf. Do you have a supplier you recommend?" No, okay, there is, in the UK, there's a gold leaf supply company that supplies sign writing people, so professionals. I can't remember what they're called for the life of me, but if you go to a website that specifically deals with professionals who do sign writing, and you are 99% sure to get genuine stuff. There is fake gold leaf, for example, on the market. It looks bright and just ugly. That stuff. But yeah, make sure that it says real, actual copper leaf, and you're fine. I've bought copper leaf on Amazon in the past. In fact, all of the copper leaf I used on shred came via Amazon because I couldn't find in this workshop where I had my copper leaf. It was just gone. So yeah, just make sure it's real and you'll be okay. The gold size, that I got from a proper sign writing house. So yeah. PJ Woodworks has sent, I I think Krona. I'm not entirely sure. It says, bandsaws. I've got ceramic guides on mine. It makes sparks. Any concerns when it comes to sparks going into the dust collector? I have asked this before. Okay, or I may have asked this before. Yes, it worries me as well. Yes. I can't say anything else. If you've got constant sparks, then I would suggest that you need to loosen everything up just a fraction. But I've never heard of one of those things causing a fire. I never have. However, I mean, sparks and wood dust, it's not good. I don't think that it will make it all the way into the dust collector. What I think you might have an issue with is the dust that collects, that doesn't get pulled into the dust extractor, that ends up nestled in the bottom of your bandsaw. A spark in there can cause a fire, and well. I have had a fire in the dust that collected in the bottom of my bandsaw, and I had completely forgotten that. Absolutely amazing. Okay, I can't remember what started it. It must have been that. There we go. Wow, that was a long time ago. So that was in the first workshop that was at home, with the insulation in the ceiling and all that jazz. And I had sort of a lean-to on the front of the workshop, and there was the big BS 500 from the record no longer make. I had a fire in there in that dust. So the most important thing that I would say to you is make sure that dust gets cleaned out weekly, if not more. Just make sure that your extraction is always taking it out. Loosen the ceramics and avoid fire. I mean, there is a gentleman in the comments here who has had his entire workshop burnt down. So it's just doesn't bear thinking about. Real KH has come in with a €5.49 super chat, and he says, "Hey Ben, next build after GGBO will be my first semi-acoustic. How important is the placement and the size of sound holes? I want to go crazy." Okay. On a semi-acoustic, thus implying that you've got at the very least, a block underneath the bridge. Okay, thus connecting the top and the back, and basically, if you've got that, then you're not driving sound. You don't have a sound box. You've got a very lightweight. I can't wait till you guys see what I'm doing for GGBO. You've got a very, very lightweight electric guitar, and it really doesn't matter beyond the aesthetics what you do with your F-hole. It's gonna, some of the sound is gonna come out, yes. But the size, the placement of your F-hole, other than the structural, i.e. if you make it far too big, you might have issues with the top breaking if you lean in the wrong place, for example. Other than those things, it's not going to affect the quality of the acoustic sound coming out of it, because you don't have much of that anyway. Essentially, the strings are fighting against those blocks. Now, if you have no blocks and you're going for an acoustic sound and you're trying to maximize on that, then yes, 100% the size of the sound hole, the F-holes, etc. absolutely does affect the sound that is produced. And we're very well trained. Our eyes are very well trained. If you look at PRS hollow body, I want one of those guitars. I want one of those guitars so badly, and I always have. I'm really actually going to see if I can get one of those. I'll probably have it for like 3 weeks and then realise I could do better and sell it, but I've always wanted one. Derailed myself. If you look at the PRS hollow body, if you look at the 335, if you look at this ovation, for example, the F-holes are the right size and they look the right size. If you make them too big, your brain's going to say, well, those are just too big. And essentially, we've trained our brain to be able to aesthetically say whether it's going to sound good or not. I think that's how it works. Yeah. There is a study you might be able to find online about violins, and it's a paper that somebody did, maybe for a thesis or something like that, where they did a whole study on historical instruments and the size of the F-holes, and you could see through history in the sort of 1600s, I think, 1700s, F-holes were getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then they shrunk back a little bit because they'd pushed it too far. It's that whole thing that a person rises to their level of incompetence within a job. So oftentimes the manager of the company actually he's been promoted one step too far, and it's the same sort of thing. So yeah, the F-holes got too big, they started being detrimental to the sound, and then everybody realised, okay, actually this is the size that a violin F-hole should be. Period. Captain of my shed says I would have major concerns about sparks going into dust collection. The sparks are so short-lived that and with most bandsaws there's a convoluted pathway to get to the dust collector that it's not something I've heard of being an issue. I have heard of static potentially being an issue for dust collection, but I'm still not sure if that's real or not. But anyhow, John Hempel, welcome, John. He's coming with a $5 Aussie, I think, super chat, and said, "Hi Ben, thanks for the tip of the figured gidgee." Haha, definitely Aussie dollars. It's a pleasure. Can you tell me the limit to fretboard thickness? How thin is too thin? Measuring mid or edge. Okay, well with gidgee, which is, if I recall correctly, hard as ever living hell. You could probably actually get away with a 5 or a 6 millimeter thick fretboard measured in the middle. Most fretboards on most guitars are 7 to 8 millimeters, and going back to our eyes are trained, that just looks right. But on vintage Fenders, 5 or 6 millimeters is around about where it's at, if I'm not much mistaken. So yeah, with a fretboard that is that dense, 5 or 6 millimeters should be fine. I would suggest 7 millimeters is about ideal for most fretboards. Here we go. Okay. Giraffe Media says, just did my first little finish repair, a little dent in a gloss finish. Ouch. I would have loved to buy some sort of emergency repair kit with everything in it: CA glue, pieces of sandpaper, razor blade, etc. Well, sir or ma'am, person of... I'm not going to presume anything. Thank you for the idea. Yeah, the Starbond actually does a particular glue for exactly that. Yeah, gap filler, thick, etc. That's a very, very good idea, and I'm going to put that. In fact, with that in mind, there are about 3,500 people watching this right now. sorry. There's 250 people watching me now, listening as I speak, or at least with a 30-second delay, I think. There's about 3,500 people watching who started a little bit later. All of you, any of you, if you have ideas, if you have something that you want us to offer at Crimson Guitars that will make your life easier as a guitar builder, as, I don't know, whatever, please let me know. This is... I mean, that's the name of the game. You know, if you need something and you think, oh, Crimson should have that, drop us an email or send me a message or something, and we will have a look, because that is what I want to do. Garage Master Guitars has sent £5 and said, for chicken cam. If I carve out some text in an aluminium base, what would be good to use to fill it with? Black CA glue, dried epoxy, or dyed epoxy? Many thanks. I would... I'd probably say neither of those, to be honest. Just a standard enamel paint. Obviously, hey, buy the black CA glue that we sell. Why not? But no, I would suggest that you get yourself some standard black metal etching enamel paint available at any hardware anywhere for painting gates and things. I would either very carefully fill everything, or personally I would probably just slather it on there and then sand back. But yeah, that would be my bet. I don't think CA glue would... It would definitely fill it. I'm not sure how well that would last if this is going outside, and you said 4 chicken cam, so don't know. But yeah, if it's inside, CA glue would be fine, epoxy would definitely be fine, but the metal paints are designed for metal, and there are some that say pre-etching that essentially cut into the metal a little bit and create a key for it to grab onto. I would, if there is something that is specifically for painting metal, then I would use that, in my opinion. Mark Potemra says, what makes shielding paint better than copper foil shielding? Alrighty. First of all, the fact that it says rearguard shielding paint protects your back cavity on it. Pun very much intended and carefully worked out. Okay, so time. This, yes, it takes a little bit of time to dry, but you paint it on there and it's done in 3 or 4 minutes tops. Okay, one of these little things will last probably 4 or 5 guitars, or even more. It says made by Luthiers for Luthiers. That's the sort of thing that actually makes me sort of go, but it's true. Anyhow, so it really saves you time. I have spent countless hours fiddling around with copper and copper foil and folding it back and cutting my fingers, and it's just a problem. Okay, so this saves you time. I'm assuming you don't have endless hours to spend on guitar building. We all want to spend more time guitar building. Now, so that's one thing. The other is that this is entirely homogeneous, and if you paint the entire cavity is shielded, period. It's one contiguous connected thing. A lot of copper shielding tape is not, unless it is very, very expensive stuff. And 3M, of course, make a really, really expensive stuff where the glue that holds it down itself is also conductive. Unless it's the expensive stuff, the glue isn't conductive. The glue actually insulates individual pieces of copper tape and stops the Faraday cage from working. Now, I personally don't believe that a Faraday cage has to be 100% perfect. It was a weird noise I made there. You can have small gaps and things like that, but with multiple pieces of copper, you might have massive gaps. Now, there are people who would fold the edges over, and I used to do this all the time, and then push the folded edge over onto the back, and it's sort of just sitting there and flapping, and it should be okay, it should be. But again, you're wasting time and time and time and time. Shielded paint does that. When you when you paint something with this and use a meter to test it, the continuity, etc., is perfect, as good as, if not better than, copper, etc. Where you're really saving is on the time that you waste using copper, and the fact that it is better. Whew. You can also use it to finish guitars if you like a really cool sort of ceramic-y kind of a graphite kind of a feel, as is evidenced by my GGBO 2020 entry. Okay. I need questions, and I have got some WhatsApp messages from SC Guitars. I need to remember to check them. Come on then. Okay, Spike the Frugal Fix, this is at Ben. My flash is a shielding nightmare. I wrapped the controllers in foil, no luck. Please pass it on, SC Guitars. Any other ideas other than constant on? No. So honestly, I had the same issue as I said in the last podcast with my Cyberpunk 2077 build. These LEDs that flash on and off, they've got an internal circuit that makes horrendous noise. Now, the only way that you're going to avoid that noise, tell you what, forget everything I said. I have got a huge amount of incredibly intelligent people who watch my videos. Go back to the Cyberpunk 2077 build series, and in the sort of last few videos when I was wiring up the LEDs, I found this problem, and there were many suggestions from people with ways to fix it, people more intelligent than I. There were people who were talking about feedback destroyers. They were talking about putting I think some sort of capacitors in there to negate things, or some. There were many different ideas, most of which went straight over my head. However, I hope you will find your answer in there. There maybe 300 or 400 comments on each video, but it's not a huge amount of reading, really. Okay. Smoking Frog Studios has sent $5 in and said, "Hi Ben, I need a new blade for my 12-inch bandsaw and could use some advice on the best type, size, TPI, etc. to cut out body and neck shapes. I love shred." No. Let's talk about bandsaws. I don't need to show you shred again. Okay. You need several. It is advantageous to have several different depth blades, i.e. the thickness of the blade. If you are going to be ripping down, so book matching an 8-inch top, for example, or something that extreme, then you want 3, maybe 4 TPI. There are essentially, what that means is that there's a bigger distance between the tip of each tooth, and it clears a lot more sawdust and binds up a lot less. And if your blade is buried in an 8-inch, there we go, bored, then you've got, from when the tooth hits, or you've got 8 inches where it's holding the dust. If you've got 6 or 8 or 10 teeth, it's going to get clogged up and it's going to start smoking, and it just slows everything down and begins to cause trouble. So 3, maybe 4 TPI. There are blades as well where essentially it's a skip tooth pattern, I think is what they call it, but the kerf of the blade is where the teeth are angled out. There we go, like that. And what they'll do is they'll have one tooth that's here, one that's in the middle, and one off on the edge. And that also means that there's even more room for the sawdust to live. Now, bandsaw blades is one of those things. You can spend a lot of money on a bandsaw blade, and it is almost always worth doing. There are ceramic tipped teeth. Ceramic? Oh, crikey. Okay. 10:30 in the evening. I am flagging. Yeah. So basically, talk to the bandsaw company, ask them who make the best blades, or go for a custom blade maker, and they will say, well, this is for that, etc. That's the best bet. Now, for cutting out bodies, I would say a 1/2 inch with 6 TPI to maybe 8 TPI would be about right. I also use a 3/8 of an inch. If you want to have a blade that stays on there pretty much all the time and does most things okay, but not necessarily as accurately as it could, a 3/8 of an inch blade with 6 TPI will go around all corners that you need to do and will cut through the thickness of a body very, very well. So something like that, buy the best quality you can and you'll be okay. Now, tough saws. That's from Ben Timon. Yes, I have used tough saws in the past. I'm not sure who we use anymore. There we go. Bedroom programmers talking to Spike the Frugal Fixer about capacitors to fix and reduce the noise. Go2.11 says, hi Ben, so Triton router, how do you use the depth stop? It seems there's no instructions and plenty of ways to use it. Hold on, I've lost your messages. Seems there's no instructions and plenty of ways to use it wrongly. Mini demo, please. My router's all the way back here. It feels so naughty being on this side of the camera while it's filming. Crikey, how's it going? Okay, so hello router. I'm sorry I've been doing nothing but kit builds or acoustic guitars that don't really need you for so long. Okay, so with this, if you push that in, it loosens up and down, okay? And you can basically set it to wherever you want to go. I never use that. On the side it goes negative and positive. Pull the clutch in and just rotate your hand to push it down or pull it up. Because you've got a geared system in here, the name of which it's completing is escaping me, you can bung it up a little bit if you push that in and rotate this clutch here. So don't do those things. Now the other thing that I would say is, again, because you've got that geared system, when you use it, there's a little bit of play. So once you've set your depth just with a little bit of pressure on it, and then lock her off. The lock's on this side, and that will do. Now there is one final thing, and that is the fine adjustment. And these are the reason that I love these routers. That there is your fine adjustment, and you can. That's rotating the whole thing. See? This you just can't beat this. I've been using Triton routers now for, oh crikey, well you guys can probably tell me, at least 10 years. I've only been sponsored by them maybe for the last 4 properly. Well, I'm not sure. Probably not even that. So yeah, there we go. Now I am 100% flagging. I've got to be up in the morning doing a great guitar build off. Carbide tipped. That's what I meant, not ceramic tipped. Thank you very much, Richard Garnish. I am getting sleepy in my information. It appears to be somewhat spotty. Robert C. Drake says, hello. What kind of files would you recommend for scalloped fretboards below the 13th fret? Anything that you can find, really. I scalloped shred. Yeah, let's get shred out just before the end of the episode. I am so happy with how this guitar turned out. It just... yeah. I was going to copper plate the bridge, although I actually think the silver works really well there. I was going to copper leaf the pickups, but again, I think that works. I want to matte the black control knobs down, and I think I want black tuning keys. But that's pretty much all I want to change. I might recarve the neck. I want to keep this shape, but make it smaller. Okay, now. Files, scalloped frets. I didn't forget, honest. When I did that, I used a gouge actually to start it, which wasn't necessary, but any half round file will do. In fact, I use rasps for the first part of it. So a half round rasp, or a round rasp, even a rat tail rasp. Just make sure you don't hit the frets and you're okay, to be honest. PJ Woodworks has come in and said, thanks for doing what you do. And he's... oh, completely misread that. He sent 55 kronas, I think. He said, thanks for doing what you do. My pre-World War I Stanley number 8 won't retract the blade completely. Wrong frog? Too tight a mouth? No. Yes, absolutely, it's rubbish. Send it to me. Hold on, let me put this guitar down. Everybody knows that I only build guitars as an excuse to use planes. So, essentially what you've got here, these 2 screws, loosen them up and the whole frog will move forwards and backwards. That, if your blade is touching on the front of the mouth there, then that's been pushed too far forward. Loosen those off. You might have an adjustment knob under here to pull that backwards and forwards. No. Yes. Okay. So that there's a screw there to pull the frog backwards and forwards. Loosen the 2 in there, pull that backwards, then tighten those down and you'll be fine. Now, the other... there are magnets holding them up as well, by the way. The other issue that you may well have is I've got too many planes here. There's another one that needs a repair. Is that L. Bailey's patent, December 24th, 1867. Ah. Okay. So you might have too much of a gap between the front of the cap iron and the blade. I can't do that backwards. you want to have a millimeter or less between the two. The mechanism by which your blade is pushed forward and retracted is based on the cap iron. That's the cap iron. I really am tired. It's based on this part. There's a notch in here that you're... This is an incredibly early plane. Wow. This doesn't even have the sideways adjuster on there. I could... Bloody hellfire. Alrighty. I really haven't looked at it all too closely. I just nabbed it and took it. That could be your issue, essentially. You need your blade and that section, the name of which I've completely forgotten now, to line up with less than a millimeter. I'll sort that out later. Adam, you're a very, very, very naughty man. I now owe you 2 phone calls. You've sent another $100 as a super chat, and I'm now embarrassed. And thank you very much. You are insane, dude. Okay. If those things do not help with your pre-war number 8 plane, please give me a shout. But it's almost certainly one of those things. Essentially, it just needs a bit of a setup. There are videos on YouTube by various very well-known YouTubers whose names completely escape me at this late hour, who will give you advice on how to set up a plane, how to restore planes, etc. And you should go for it. Barry Reed says, "Hi Ben, looking for recommendations for hardware for my PRS kit guitar. Good quality but not too expensive. Absolutely love shred. Looking forward to your GGBO competition entry." Okay, I don't think you can go wrong with Goto. It seems every second sentence is, hey, we're selling it at Crimson now. We've started selling Goto hardware at Crimson because so many people were asking us what we recommend for kits. Now, Goto is actually at the expensive end. It is also impeccable quality. So, yeah, I mean, Goto, Shala. I love Shirtler tuners. They're not hugely expensive. But it really is very, very difficult. Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult to think at this stage. Good quality, but not too expensive. The problem is what defines too expensive. I remember when I strung up a guitar and I cut on the wrong side of the string. No, it wasn't me. It was the bass player. It was Nick. He cut on the wrong side of the string. And I had saved up to buy that set of strings. I was livid. He cut a brand new string. And now I own a guitar company. For crying out loud. So yeah, it's a difficult question, but I would say essentially you need to buy the most expensive that you can. The cheap stuff. If you find a control knob that is cheap, you're probably okay, as long as it's got a grub screw to hold it in. You know, £10, £5, something like that. Fine, go for it. Cheap pot metal bridge. So the cheapest bridge you can find, just don't even look at it. And in the end, you almost certainly get what you pay for with hardware and with tools. Okay, this is interesting. Cal Style is coming with $10 and said, "Hi Ben, I made a massive mistake during my GGPO build." I'm sorry. And I'm mentally working my way through how to talk about it in my next YouTube video. Would you talk a little bit about imposter syndrome among luthiers? Okay. it's a very, very real thing, and I think it's like the placebo effect. Even if you know you're being given a placebo, it still has an effect, which, like, mind blown. Even if you know that imposter syndrome is a thing, and that you're currently going through imposter syndrome, it doesn't make it any easier. I mess up. I messed up on shred. It just, mistakes happen, and it just is what it is. The thing that I will say, and I've said it already in this video, is mistakes and how you deal with mistakes make you who you are. I have had people work for me who were never wrong. Not once. They don't work for me anymore. Nobody is infallible. Period. And if you are going to put it in your video and say, this is what I've done, this is what I've learned, this is how I'm going to fix it, all that is going to happen is that the people who are watching your videos are going to go, wow, dude, seriously, thank you for sharing this. I'm not going to make that mistake myself. Is there any way I can help? Here's, just a comment saying, commiserations or whatever. I regularly get comments from people when I've utterly screwed up. I can turn the camera off. I do sometimes, mostly when I forget the camera's going and I scratch my ass or something. But I can delete footage, but I choose to put everything that you see. I've chosen. I've got an editor. My sister Talitha edits the videos for me. She knows to try and make me look good if at all possible, but I edit in camera. I delete every single clip that I am not happy with going live online. And most of the time that's when I've got here's a tip for anybody filming stuff. Canon BR-E1. This little thing lives in my pocket. It's maybe a 15 quid tool. If you've got a Canon camera, I literally only discovered this 6 months ago maybe. And I set the camera up there and I push the button and it clicks record. And then I push the button and I stop it. And it saves 30 seconds maybe per clip of me walking backwards and forwards. Sometimes I push the button and I'm recording for 10 minutes and I'll go and I'll delete that clip. Or if something, not necessarily there's a mistake, if it's something, Talitha knows I delete everything that I don't want her to see, and she can use anything else that I give her with full permission. Now, the fact that I do that means that my fans know that I'm 99% of the time going to show exactly what happened, no matter how much it embarrasses me. And I get comments saying, thank you, Ben, for proving that, even a luthier like yourself, who's built a couple hundred guitars and has been doing it for 20 years, makes mistakes. And I think that you need to internalize that. You made a mistake and you're learning from it. And you're publishing the fact that you made a mistake so that other people will learn from your mistake. You could hide it. I'm sure you could hide it if you wanted to. But the story and the journey keeps people coming back. I messed up with a customer very, very early on. I bit off more than I could chew. It took far too long to build the guitars. There was a major issue, and he went on a forum and he basically listed everything that I'd done wrong, and I'd done all of them. It was all wrong. And I saw it, and I immediately replied and said, you're right about that, you're right about that, I'm really sorry about this. Everything that you said is absolutely right, and we'll make it right. And here are my 2 reasons for what's happened, and I'm so sorry, but here it is. And in a public forum, I admitted I was wrong. I admitted what happened. I gave my explanation, and not only did the customer remain a friend of mine, let alone, he was angry. and he became a friend. But I've had people buy guitars based on how I dealt with that really disadvantageous situation. And for the rest of my life, that was 15, 20 years ago, I have believed that that's the way. Now, imposter syndrome itself, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about, that's a difficult one. I think that we are all... There is always going to be somebody who is better than you. I was randomly poking through... I think I ended up on Pinterest, actually, looking at guitars. There's a lot of really, really pretty guitars on Pinterest, actually. And I'm looking at these guitars going, whoa, crikey. He's probably 10 years younger than me, and oh my gosh, that's a pretty guitar. And constantly, and I'm going, wow, I call myself a guitar builder. And there's people who's better than me, there's people who are learning from me. And we just need to keep a level head and keep on doing our thing and learn and be better. And I think that's where we are. Okay, now, Bulgarian Evolution says, speaking of mistakes, you mentioned working too long on a build and making simple mistakes. I drilled a strap buttonhole on the wrong one this morning. Oh, crikey. On the wrong horn this morning in a rush to go play it for the first time. Oh, crikey. Okay. Anyway, look, I'm going to say... Hold on, I saw something nice. Gramazo and Faborden says, the apprentice tries to learn how to not make mistakes. The master knows how to hide them. And that is it. We are there. Okay, finally, question on tools. Owen Dias says, I'm going to buy a hand drill. Should I be looking for a single or a double pinion? Honestly, a double pinion is a better, more stable. Yeah. Let's look at a different one. This is a Miller's Falls number 77. This is the pinion here, and you can see that there's only one. And with a poorly set up plane drill, as you're going around a single pinion, you can get that sort of a movement, and it's not ideal. With a double pinion, you've got a pinion there and one here, and that basically means that you don't get that wobbly effect. But I don't have that wobbling on that one. I have a little bit on this baby, yet I absolutely love it. Nonetheless, look at how good. This is a Coca-Cola handle. With its original Florets drill bits in it. Anyway, a digression, total digression. Okay, Marsha Levine has come in with $5 and says, I am on my lunch break at work, 5:50 p.m. midway through my shift, and wanted to say hi. Hi. And I hope the rest of your shift goes wonderfully and you don't have to deal with too many customers. Customers are fine in the abstract, but customers in person become customers. And yeah, I've spent... I know, yeah. Anyway, welcome to the chaos. I hope you have a good break. Now, yes, Tahoe Mike says, experience is what you learn from your mistakes. Education is what you learn from other people's mistakes. That's why the best teachers are total screw-ups. I'll take that. I like that. Hey, I chose to put tattoos on my head. What can I say? Anyway, look, I am definitely... Ravenwolf says, we lost him. He's admiring drills. I am definitely calling it a night. This has gone on far too long. I really am trying to keep these shorter. Let me just double check and see if there's any messages that I missed here. Sam Maskery. Hi Ben, I had a thought today. What would frets made out of nut material, brass, bone, etc. sound? I have got a couple of 100-year-old instrument at the house at the moment that's going to be for sale for GGBO, on behalf of GGBO, that has ivory frets. Sounds great. Brass frets. Jescar make brass-ish frets. In fact, normal frets are... Wow, I'm tired. Okay. Normal frets are made of nickel silver, and there's no silver in them. The main material in normal frets is brass. Brass mixed with nickel. So, and so, I mean, they sound just like normal frets, essentially. And you can't make frets out of ice cream. Oh, would you rather? Here we go. Ravenwolf Guitars. Would you rather sand for 1 year straight or wire guitars for 1 year? Sand. Though I suppose wiring would give me warmth at least. Yeah, I would rather sand. Okay, Lucifer, I missed a message here. He said, so if I bail on shielding paint on my GGBO, am I in trouble? Do I really need it? I'm using passive EMGs. You really do need... I had heard of an active system in one of these questions, actually, where it said you actually shouldn't shield the cavity. That is the only case I've ever heard of where it's advisable to not shield the cavity. Whether you use shielding paint or even aluminium foil flashing tape that you can just get at a local hardware store for a couple of bucks, even that is better than nothing. And I'm looking at about 3 rolls of it here behind the camera. So shielding is required. It really is. Especially, just yeah, do it. I don't care whether you buy shielding paint from Crimson or something from a hardware store or whatever. It's something that you should do. And there we go. So yeah, Spike the Frugal Fixer, that's the LEDs. I hope that you're going to find a solution there. Sean Dolby, just a follow up to my earlier super chat. Yes, I love the stain and colour. I think I made a mistake on an oil coat. I tried to rub it back and then removed some of the stain and it ended up uneven. Okay, so yes, if you've got uneven stain, then you're probably going to have to sand back, not to bare wood, but at least until it looks even, and then a coat of another coat of stain, and then oil and rubber back, and oil and rubber back, so on and so on and so on. Grammasal and Faborden said, I used kitchen foil and Pritt stick to shield a cavity once. Worked a treat. Go for it. I can't believe I've never thought of that. Nice one. Okay, anyway everybody, I am calling it a night. I really would like to say thank you very, very much to each and every one of you, but especially to Adam Rohn. Adam, drop me an email if you would like to schedule a phone call or something. You have definitely earned a one-on-one chat if you would like that. That makes me feel somewhat like a lady of the night for some reason, but anyway, yeah, Adam ended up sending at least 200, maybe 250 quid tonight in super chats, which is incredible, and I really appreciate it. Paul 23 Fitz has come in just at the last. He's not watching live. He says catching up from the start on an iPad, 90 minutes behind. This on iPhone, no question, but nice chocolate. Oh yes. So Paul 23 Fitz sent me that whiskey last time. The box has literally just gone up to be recycled actually at the house, and he sent through some Om Nom chocolate from Reykjavik, which is literally the tastiest milk chocolate / with coffee. It's milk chocolate with coffee. I opened it in the last live stream, right towards the end of the last live stream. Somebody asked if there was an address to which they could send something for me to look at, and I suddenly remembered that I'd been told that I had a package that I needed to open on camera. So yeah, essentially Crimson Guitars, everything goes to Crimson HQ. People there open it, and if it's for me, they reseal it and bring it here, making sure there's no razor blades or bombs or whatever. But I opened these, and my wife immediately went, "Oh, it's my birthday, is it?" And stole one. But oh my gosh, thank you very, very much. And it's delicious, and we're all good. Anyway, we're done. Ciao. Have a fantastic week. Go and make some sawdust, or make a living, or preferably make a living while making sawdust, because that's few things better. I really appreciate your support. I hope this has been useful. If you haven't yet, please go and subscribe to the podcast for when you're out and about and don't necessarily want to see my ugly mug on your computer screens. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying everything that's going on right now. For the next 2 weeks, Great Guitar Build-Off. Let's see how that one turns out. Goodbye.